Welcome to Your Next Level Now with your host, Bob Donnell. As a human behaviorist, Bob has helped people from every walk of life reach their next level, both personally and professionally. Whether a celebrity, professional athlete, or entrepreneur, Bob has helped them align their behavior with their desired result in their life and career. This is Your Next Level Now with Bob Donnell.
All right. Good morning, good evening, wherever you guys are watching this. It's so fun when you see somebody saying it's 2:00 in the morning. Are you kidding? Awesome. We love it. So, guys, I just want to tell you, welcome tonight. You are in for a treat. You know, I say that a lot, but it's because I've really made a practice over the last 30 years to really surround myself with exceptional people. And so it always is a treat. You know, when I get to sit down with somebody like you're going to meet tonight, Jason, and I get to sit down with them, whether it's once a year, 20 times a year, it doesn't matter. I always look at it as, man, this is a treat. This is just a privilege and an honor. So tonight, you guys are going to hear an exceptional story. We're going to have some great stuff. But as always, at 6:30, what we do is we start the conversation where if you're on in Zoom, you're welcome to bring yourself on camera. And we're going to just start with a question and let everyone connect over the one question. You know, I've done this everywhere over in the world with leaders, business leaders, military leaders, you name it. And it's always fun to just see how people connect differently when there's an intentional question. So today's question is going to be one that I again, when we ask the question, what I encourage everyone to do is listen to the question, listen to the person responding, and then just simply say, thank you for sharing. No need for feedback, no need to give coaching, counsel, just simply thank you for sharing. So tonight's question, I thought about this. Have you ever seen something that was so disturbing that you wish you hadn't seen it? And it might not only be seen, maybe it was heard or experienced something that you go, gosh, man. You know, I always think when I think about this question, I think how many times, you know, somebody talks about walking in on their mom and dad when they were little or something, and they go, man, I can't unsee that. Well, there's things in our lives that we see and we experience that we maybe wish we could just get rid of it, but you know we can't. So if you've had an experience, we're going to start with Flo. What was something that you've seen or experienced that you wish you could unsee? And why was it so disturbing?
I have to go back in my mental recall, because if it was disturbing,
You blocked it out.
I've released it because I didn't want to hold on to it.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm really thinking of, you know, and the first thing that came up was, you know, a friend that was in an accident was in the hospital, and I got to see, you know, their banged up, whatever body.
Now, let's not shorten that one. Was it a friend or was it your boyfriend at the time?
Boyfriend, yeah, at the time.
You were 15 and he was what?
I was just to turn 16 and he just turned 18.
And I know I'm calling you on it. I know I'm not just saying simply thank you for sharing, but because I think that even adds more emotional impact. The fact that he was your first real boyfriend,
Right.
in at that level. So thank you for being willing to share that.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Jim Miller, how are you, brother?
Hey, Bob. Wow. What popped into my mind, I've got a couple of visions, but the worst one for me that I wish I could unsee, I was in college up in San Luis Obispo, California Street by the railroad tracks. You may know it. And there was a hit and run. Big truck hit a pedestrian and knocked her probably 40 yards. And I remember I was the first one on the scene. and I saw her, I heard it, and it's like, God, I wish I could unhear that. And then I saw her shoes in the middle of the street, and then her body was way down, and whoever hit her took off. It was a big truck, and she was dead, just completely. Yeah, it was horrible. So that was a hard one.
Wow, no doubt. No doubt. Thank you for sharing that. Alana.
Thank you, Bob. Well, I've hesitated watching the movie that you've brought up because of not wanting to see the children trafficking that vivid. But anyway, as far as what has already been seen, I have to say, because I've released a lot of stuff, is the World Trade Center. They keep having to show those pictures over and over and over and over and over and over. And I feel for it. When I see it, I can shut it off at this point. But when I think of the people who had loved ones right there, et cetera, and every single year they keep bringing it back. So I feel for them, and I'd like to unsee it as well. It affected me because it could have been possibly prevented when they saw red lights, red signs about it, and the businesses as well as the lives.
Man, I tell you, I think every one of us can empathize with that one. That we remember where we were, we remember what we felt, all of that. So thank you for sharing that. Mine is obviously it's the day that my daughter was in a car accident that I witnessed and watched it unfold, and then watched the impact, and then pulled her out of the car and breathed for her until the paramedics got there, but she passed away. Obviously the outcome I would obviously want to, but just to remove that image, to not even have that image or the auditory of hearing that, it's definitely something I wish I could have just looked away, or wish I could have not have had to witness that, be part of that. Our guest of honor tonight is Jason Cisneros, who's been a friend of mine for a long time. We met through another mutual friend, Wesley Gu, and Jason, he's just been a solid warrior. I mean, that's the only way I would describe Jason, is just a warrior. And he's got a huge heart, huge compassion. But he's embarked on a journey for the last several years, dealing with this subject matter that we're going to talk about tonight in our open forum, human trafficking. Jason, I can't even imagine some of the things you've seen. I mean, we've talked about some of them. Can't imagine, don't want to imagine. But maybe even one of those experiences or something else in your life, maybe that you just go, I wish I could just unsee that.
It's an interesting question. Thank you for sharing, brother. I know, that's such a deep seated thing with you, and it just breaks my heart every time I have to think about it. And I love you. So
I love you, brother. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's tough. Everybody had a little version of, releasing and getting past stuff. And I've just, as I was going through, I'm like, I have books of stuff that I've seen, like just books, and it's interesting, one of the ones that I'm not sure that I would take away any of them, because they've built each and every one of them, I look at like a brick in the wall of what's supposed to be my life, God's call on my life, the things that I've seen. One of the things that altered how I, something that, because again, there's lots of horrific stories, but one of the things that altered my decision making, which I went back and have since dealt with, because I think the things that put a fear in us are the ones that need to be dealt with. the most, right?
Amen.
And one that altered my decision making for a lot of years. I decided, as you know, I don't have I'm not certain a person who avoids high risk activities.
No, no, that would not be Jason.
Right. And so one of the activities that I got really, really excited about 12 years ago was hang gliding and, and parasailing. And so I met a really, really great guy. It was Point of the Mountain in Utah, which is world famous for having an updraft that you can just stay up there for days if you want.
Wow, how cool.
And my house was just on the other side of that. And I kept seeing everybody up there. And, finally I met the instructor, and he said, yeah, just go out there, park for a little while, get yourself a cup of coffee, watch the parasailers, watch the hang gliders, and just kind of tell me which one you want to do. And I'll bring them. I'll bring both, and whatever you want to do, we'll start. And so I'm watching them, man, and I'm watching the hang gliders and I'm watching the parasailers, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the parasailing just looks so amazing. It just looks so amazing. And I'm taking a drink of coffee, and as soon as I'm like, that parasailing's it, that's the one I want to learn today. That's where I want to start. Because the other one just seemed constrictive. You have to hold on to stuff. Yeah. And as soon as I took that drink of coffee, I was looking up at a particular parasailer, and his parachute collapsed, and he dropped, straight. I don't know how many stories, but it was a good 1,000 feet, I think, that he just dropped and bounced probably 300 or 400 feet in front of my Jeep at the time. And I was like, did that just happen? Like, I mean, he bounced and, his bones poking out of his leg. And I was like, what is going on? And, Flight for Life comes in, and just as Flight for Life's leaving, my instructor pulls up and he goes, well, which one did you decide? I said, hang gliding. I'm like, I am not parasailing ever because of what I just saw. And, because that little triangle, believe it or not, will like give you 1,200 pounds of, of protection.
Wow.
And so it altered the way that I behaved. And so as soon as I realized that, I started jumping out of planes and, to get over the fear of it. And, now I'm learning how to literally, what they call kite surfing, right, with those and that kind of stuff. Cause now I'm at the ocean, so I don't have as much opportunity to jump off of really tall things. But that one, that was, yeah. I don't know if I wish I would have unseen it, but it altered my behavior. And that was something that I couldn't deal with.
Yeah. I love that. I love the fact that you're saying you don't want to necessarily get rid of it. But you do appreciate and value the fact that it altered your behavior. I love that. I do a round table circle sometimes. And one time I had this guy who was no arms and no legs sitting at the table, and I can ask him any question I want. And we got a group of about 10, 12 people. And I said, if you could have something back, an arm and a leg, or your arms or your legs back, which would you have? And he goes, none. He goes, I really like who I am today, and that's made me who I am today, and I like that. Wow. I'm like, yeah, okay.
It's radical acceptance, right? I mean, it's just because you can't. I mean, the thought of being able to alter something is a fruitless endeavor, and using it as something that can fuel you, educate you, inspire other people, like you've done with your story. I mean,
thank you.
Crying out loud, who knows who you would have been, right? And how many lives maybe you wouldn't have touched. It's I think, I fully believe, and I have to believe, that everything works to God's good.
Amen.
And it sucks sometimes because it's not in our plan,
right?
But you wait. Like the text that goes back and forth between me and Pastor Rudy, the guy that founded the rescue team I'm on.
Yeah.
The text that goes back and forth between us the most is God is hilarious, because eventually you have to laugh at the irony of something radically painful in your life becoming the thing that saved another's life, or saved your life, or changed your life, or gave you a different decision-making mechanism to alter your behavior or the behavior of other people to really improve things. And so that's kind of how I look at it. And
I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate it, brother.
Yeah.
I just want to go around the room. While it's a small room, we're going to go around the room, and I'm going to introduce you to some people so they get an idea. When you hear Jason's story tonight, you're going to be blown away. If you've got friends that you want to invite, send them the link now. Get them in, and they can listen in and be a part of. Jim Miller is a leadership expert guy, and he's been a member now for a few months, and we just really have a real deep affinity and affection for him. Just a solid guy, and revamping, reinventing himself at the same time as everyone does, and just a really good guy. But Jim, you're gonna love Jason, and you're gonna want to find ways to stay connected. So we'll make sure the contact information is there. He's in our group already, so you can contact him in the group. But I just want you guys to definitely get to know each other. Jason has been a dear friend for many years. I'll never forget the night I'm at a public event. We're just doing like a Taco Tuesday or something in Newport Beach, and all of a sudden I look up at the door and I see this figure walking towards me. I'm like, it's Jason. And he's like, hey. I said, what are you doing here? He goes, I just saw that you were going to be here, so I thought I'd just pop over and surprise you. I'm like, surprise? That was awesome. I remember that, and it's a moment that I hold very dear. So I'm very grateful for that time.
Yeah, ditto. And then seeing you on your porch, every once in a while, because Sean lives real close to you. That's been 2 or 3 times that's happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He surrounds himself with some solid people, folks. That's one of the things, and Sean is one of those guys. He's an amazing guy. So I really look forward to hearing more about the story tonight, and especially since, we talked about this a couple of years ago, but now with this new movie and everything else, some more attention. So we're going to talk about how that's going to affect that. Alana is now a friend of mine, but was a friend of Flo's for a while, and she lives real close to Flo in San Luis Obispo or Pismo Beach area, and she's involved in a lot, and she's just got a real heart for being a part of and helping people in every area of their life, not just one area, but every area. So Alana, thanks for being here tonight. You're going to love this story. Invite your friends. You guys know how to invite in Zoom. You can go up and click the little arrow, the green shield up in the left, and you can invite people there with a text or an email. So do that. And then Flo and Jason.
Everybody knows Flo.
Everybody knows Flo. Flo, what stood out the last time? Well, because we're going to wrap it up in a couple minutes and then we'll open it up. What stood out about the last time you engaged with Jason? Because he's been on our virtual show before.
Just the stories, the experiences that, like he says, I don't want to release it because it's what has built to the foundation of, his bricks, and that just says a lot about Jason.
Yeah.
It does. He's got a great company as well, and he's fortunate enough to now let everybody run and do the things that he's passionate about, and that's we need more people like Jason. So
yeah, we do. We definitely
need more people like Flo.
Oh.
It's a mutual admiration society, I think. Really big. One of the great things when we started Next Level by Association 13 years ago, members decided to label it, and one of the members labeled it a peer group for overachievers, a support group for overachievers, and then somebody else named it an intentional peer group. And I've always thought about that. The fact that they brought those up, and that was kind of cool. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take about a 5 to 7 minute break. Everyone can go grab something to drink, use the restroom, whatever. And then we're going to come back, and we're going to be in the Facebook group as well. And so get your people over to Everything Next Level Personal and Professional group, or give them the Zoom link, even better, so that they can be on camera with us and they can ask questions or anything like that. So
I like
go
what Flo said. She said, share it until it gets taken down.
Yes.
Isn't that crazy, the world we live in right now?
Crazy.
Insane. And Alana and Jim, really great to meet both of you. Really great. Look forward to getting to know you better.
Yeah,
Thank you.
likewise, Jason. Looking forward to hearing your story.
Yeah. Okay, we'll be back in about 5 minutes, guys.
Awesome.
All right, guys, welcome back. For those of you that are just now joining us, whether it's live in Facebook or on Zoom, just know that you missed a great conversation. At 6:30 every third Thursday when we do this, I bring on the people that are in the room, whoever wants to be in the room, and we all are on camera, and we focus on one question that I ask, and everyone goes around the table and answers the question. And the only thing we're allowed to say is thank you for sharing. We're not allowed to give any advice or anything else. So I invite you guys to come check that out, because it's typically reserved for members. But if you want to come one time and check that out, it's an amazing opportunity to really connect with people differently than if you were to ask them, hey, what do you do at a networking event? So, but tonight, guys, I have a friend of mine that I just have so much respect and admiration for. His name is Jason Cisneros. And aside from being a great business mind and a great business mentor and an influencer in the business space to help companies grow and help companies get scalability as well as stability, he's a genius at that. But a few years ago, and a few years ago, I remember just like listening to him talk on Facebook Live, and I'm thinking, this is different than what I'm used to hearing him talk about. And all of a sudden I started going, well, wait, human trafficking? What he's on a mission, he's going on a mission. What's he doing? And I remember reaching out going, Jason, what's up? And we had him on a couple of years ago to talk a little bit about that. And I just reached out to him a couple of days ago and said, hey, with all the Sounds of Freedom, the movie, with all that going on, it just seems like a great time to get an update from Jason and what he's doing with it, with his program. And so that's why we decided to do this tonight, guys. Jason, one, I can never explain or express enough gratitude to you for the influence that you have in my world. And now, especially with the world, with what's going on with human trafficking, how much more it's been brought to the forefront of the light. You did a lot of that. And you and certain ministries and Rudy, right?
Yes.
Have been really influential in that. And obviously this movie's come along and it's kind of blown some things up. But why human trafficking? Why did you get involved? I mean, you have a successful business, you just got married, you've got this life that people go, oh, I want to do that. And here you are running off in the middle of the night in camo gear and fighting bad guys. Why?
It's a great question. First off, thanks for having me on your show, brother. And it's always an honor for me to be able to hang out with you. You've got one of the greatest hearts and one of the brightest minds, in the business. And I always love hanging out with you, whether it's at a Taco Tuesday or here, anywhere that I get a chance to talk to you. You're just such a great human being. And thank you for being my friend.
Likewise, really brother. Thank you.
Yep. So it's a great question. And, the big push, I think, and the great opportunity is for all of us to ask everybody that's watching this or that will watch us in the future, is to ask ourselves why we do the things that we do. It's a phenomenal question. Yeah. And for me, why trafficking? It's not, as we talk about it, your show and the work that we do and the work that I aspire to do is always to talk about stuff from a perspective, because my life has only changed because of people like you and Tony Robbins and other people that put out information that I could actually apply to my life. Right. And in order for me to do that, I have to place myself in a position, not of a listener of stories, but of a seeker of new truths. And so I love to talk about things from that perspective, because my life and your life are no different than, 8 billion other people's. It's just a matter of what secrets do you have? What secrets would flow? Like all of the people that are around us, what secrets do they have? And that's usually buried under the stuff that we're trying to hide. Right. And the things that we're afraid to share. Well, or said. The thing, or the stories that we let stop us or define us. And so from that perspective, I go back, the short version of it is, when I was adopted when I was really young. Just found out recently, actually, that my mom put me up for adoption. I was adopted by the bad guy that became my adopted father, but my mom had actually put me up for adoption. And that was, I'm 50 years old finding that out, going, that was kind of crazy, I'm like, and she, all the paper was, the people were there to pick me up, and, my mom got a word from God to say, nope, you need to keep him, just, so all of us have those early stories of things that could have radically changed our lives. I don't know what it would have been like. But my story, thank God, turned out exactly the way that it did. My adopted father was a very abusive guy. And I started stepping in between him and my mom, beating her when I was somewhere around 8, 9 years old, and stepped in front of her every time I could. It wasn't every time, but every time I could. He broke my nose. I was looking through some pictures of me growing up the other day with my new wife, and my nose is on this side, that side, smushed up. It's like, it was like a journal of beatings that I had. Yeah. And, and he finally went to prison for attempted murder of me and my mom when I was 17. And I learned a lot from him in the man that I didn't want to be when I grew up. And I would get beat so bad sometimes that I would get locked in my room till my face would heal. And my grandma always made sure I had a Bible in there. I wasn't a particularly religious man, as up until a few years ago. Yeah. And but that was this, I listened to them, or I read them as a series of stories to say, oh, okay, the way, the life that I'm seeing around me is not necessarily the right life. You can make different decisions. There's other things to aspire to become. And luckily those were implanted in my subconscious, or other than conscious. And 4th grade, I ended up with a teacher who saw me come in beat up quite a few times. And she taught me to escape with the power of words. And so I fell in love with words, the dictionary, and being able to express or express myself out of the life that I was living through stories. And I developed a deep passion for reading and, those kinds of things. I never graduated from high school, because I was caught up in the stuff. I mean, I dealing drugs when I was 12. I was a great fighter because I'd been fighting a full grown man my entire life. And so I was able to collect money that guys didn't pay, and, and they scare people, and, all that kind of stuff was my younger years. And then God started putting good men, right? Good women, of course, but good men. And I say specifically men tonight because we're radically lacking, I think, in masculinity, right? I wear this shirt all the time. This shirt says toxic masculinity, because I don't think there is such a thing. I think that there is toxic weakness in the form of men, not standing up for their families and for their wives and for their country and for, but I think that these men, particularly because my example was a very weak man, no matter how, yes, he could beat my mom up. Yes, he could beat me up, but that is the height of weakness in a man, Amen. And it's the exact opposite of what we're called to be. We're called to be protectors. And so thank God. I mean, he kept putting these men in my space, and they would be like what you do for the world, which is, calling me, hey, you've got so much more potential in you. Why are you acting like a jerk? Why are you doing these things? And like the question you just asked, why did I get involved in trafficking? Well, protecting my mom, my very first passion, once I made some money, was to protect women from domestic violence. And that was my first, when I started to make money and give to charities and get involved, that was my first love, because I lived it. I know what it was like. I know my mom tried to leave and she would hold the rest of the family at gunpoint. I know she would try to leave and he would kidnap me. I know she would try to leave and she would get extra beatings for it. I know the scenarios where people are prisoners in their own home. In broad daylight, and they're in our lives right now. Everybody here knows somebody. Every 11 minutes, a woman's beaten in her own home, right? So,
Man.
so it's prevalent, and I started to understand that no matter what I have, and this is for everybody, no matter where I was or what I had, I could help ease suffering, right? We can't, there's a lot of people say, oh, we're going to end this, we're going to end that. I don't know. Human beings are human beings, but we can certainly take the things that happen to us and ease suffering in the world, whether you have a business, whether you're a coach, whether you're a pastor, whether you're just a friend, whether you're unemployed, whatever the scenario that you find yourself in, we get caught up in these grandiose ideas that we're going to change the world. It doesn't change all at once. It changes one act of random kindness at a time, as you say quite often, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And so to get into the trafficking, I made more and more money. I was blessed to have great mentors in business. I was blessed to crash my first 3 companies to learn what not to do. The greatest lessons in our life, by the way, are the things that hurt you the worst. My adopted father taught me how not to be a man. I have never raised my hand to, my children or my wife or another woman like that. Those are the things that help. And in business, it was the same thing. I learned, I have Harvard, I have Harvard and Yale and Wharton School of Business people coming to me nowadays for advice on how to fix their companies. Yeah. And so, it was no different. So I started to get invited to other kinds of things, protecting dogs and I got involved in other things, AJ and Tony Robbins, founded Feed a Billion. And so I got brought into that as I'm still CEO of that organization. And, the more money that I made, the more I started to give, and the more that I could give. And so I got invited to this fundraiser, and they showed a movie, right? And the movie was about human trafficking. And I've seen a lot from my life. I've seen a lot. Yeah. And I can tell you that broke my heart and broke my spirit in a way that I can't explain it. As you said, you saw something radically change in me, and that was the breaking of whatever was left of Jason Cisneros' ego of me being important. That it was the final getting rid of all that garbage that says, Jason Cisneros is anybody, phenomenally important in the world, and I need to have big things and fly planes and, do all this kind of stuff to prove who I am, to gain the love of people who never will love me. Like, it was just the final shell break to go, we're here, and we go through the things that we go through to build muscles in places that people that haven't been what you've been through, you, me, everybody that's on here, you've been through tragic things, and we think we're broken, right? But a human bone, when it heals, it's stronger in the broken place. And we continue to falsely administer the break as still broken, but it heals over time. And we become stronger in that broken place so that we can stand on that broken thing to serve other people. And that was a realization that I had in trafficking, because I watched this movie. I have kids, and I get goosebumps every time I think about it, that I couldn't go home. I left there, I drove my car around, I ended up in a park, and I started to cry. And I'm not a big crier, but it was, those tears that are just hot. They're not voluntary, but I was sobbing in my car at the idea that there's millions of kids that are, they call it trafficking, but it really is the rape of a child. It's the rape of a child for money. Yeah. And I sat in the car and I hit the steering wheel, and finally the sun came up, and I did a Facebook Live, and I said, this is what I saw. I don't know what I'm going to do about it. I wrote a check, obviously, at the charity, but I'm going to do something. And somebody watched that video and said, hey, Jason, we kind of know your background. We know you can handle yourself physically. Do you want to go undercover with us and go get some of these guys and grab some of these kids? And I was like, I'm in. There was no hesitation, and I know that everybody's not built to do that, but everybody's built to be in the fight to protect our most vulnerable.
Amen.
And that's our kids, that's our elderly, that's our women. And I know that this, every time I do a show, I get, oh, women could protect themselves. Yes, they can. And, that's part of our job, I think.
Yeah.
So that's what got me started into it.
I love that, Jason. I mean, it's just a testament to the man that you are. So I really appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that you cried, even though you're not normally a crier type. I love the fact that you just couldn't bring yourself to go home, so you just went and sat in the park until the sun came up. I love the fact that you sat with. Here's what I always tell people: when you're watching a SPCA commercial or the Ethiopian Kids or World Vision or whatever, and you go, I feel the need to change the channel. Don't. Stay on that channel until it provokes something in you that makes you do something different.
Right.
Even if it's just donate $5, even if it's just go visit a neighbor, whatever it is, until that moves you, don't change the channel. Let that work. And I love the fact that you did that. And I've seen you do it over and over again. And I remember watching where you were preparing to go on a mission, and you were like all geared up, and you were talking about taking the motor home, and you guys were going across. And I'm like, what is he doing? He's got a great successful business. He's got his girlfriend. He's got all this great stuff going on in his life, and he's going to go into the darkness. And like, you're asking for prayer. You were asking us for all to pray for you and your team as you were going in to rescue kids and people being trafficked. And I thought that's the Jason I love, man.
There's such a great lesson in excuse me, there's such a great lesson in that, because what you said earlier is key for people to understand that we're something, and it doesn't have to be like I think people are just tired of being guilt tripped into stuff, like, you know what I mean? But I believe that we suffer because we hide from God's calling on our life. I know all the suffering in my life was saying no, because the world was telling me all these Instagram pictures, and you have to have the Lambo, and you have to have the jet, and you have to, like, that was the thing. And I was miserable, but I know that God, and I know this for a fact nowadays, I speak it from a place of knowing that God has put something special in everybody who's watching, and everybody, that I don't possess that calling on my life, and the more that we resist it, the more the world disappoints us. But the more you answer that call, what it does is it makes you do to the world weird stuff, and I'm telling you, the lesson in that was I got so many phone calls saying exactly what you said. Jason, what are you doing? You have kids, you have a relationship, you have a successful business, people count on you, in these those other realms. What if you die? What about your own kids? And they were making valid points, and these valid points were coming from people that I loved. And, and I thought about it, and it to a point, like, there's lots of people who trolls, and they say whatever they say. I don't care about them. I don't even listen to them. But when somebody that you love and care about for years, and that they have your best interest in mind, says something, are they saying it from their framework that you might become something that will make them feel bad about themselves? Or are they saying that framework to really have you think about it from a different perspective? Right. And these are the ways that I think. And so people that I loved were saying these things, and I thought about it, and I came to the conclusion, after praying about it, that, if I do die on what a lesson for my kids, that money is fleeting, right? But service is forever. And what a great lesson for the fact that we're never done. You always hear the person who retires, which is what everybody is excited about, to retire. They die 18 months after they retire because they become useless in their own mind.
Crazy.
We're all useful until we decide we're not,
Mm.
because there's lots of people to serve. It's not just trafficking. It's, it's domestic violence. It's feeding people. It's dogs that are mistreated. It's suicide in the military. There's a lot of suffering out there that if you get over yourself, and I get over myself enough, we can start to ease their suffering. And thereby you have a mission in life forever. Right? I was listening to a 102-year-old woman who seemed like she was 50 talking the other day. I just watched this random interview, and she said, you find the thing that's inside of you that completes you, and you do that as long as you want to. Right? And it was so powerful to hear verbalize what I have been thinking, and what I've seen in the amazing people that are around me, is that once you figure out that you're answering God's call, there's nothing that can stop you, and you just go until you're tired and then go home. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Amen. Amen.
So,
what a great perspective.
Yeah,
Hey,
it's a great lesson.
Got a great question. I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
What's the last insecurity that you've had to deal with?
What a great question. The last insecurity. So what's fascinating, you mentioned the movie, right? And that was my old team. That was who I very first started doing rescues with. That same team from the movie. And we took Tony Robbins undercover, and and that's really when he got involved and started raising a bunch of money for that organization. And I started, and as I was doing that, I wasn't a Christian. And I went my separate ways from them. They were going one direction. I felt like there was another calling in the child trafficking world for me. And I went through 9, 10, 11, 12 rescue teams that I rescued with, and got a phone call from a young lady who's now become family to me out of Utah, that said, "Hey, I'm doing this fundraiser, and the team that rescued my daughter is going to be there, and I would love for you to meet them." And so I came up, I spoke. It was a fundraiser, met him, Pastor Rudy Gonzalez, and his wife Lori, and his daughter Cece, and his daughter Madeline. This happens every once in a while. Give me 2 seconds here. So I met them, and when I met him, I'm embarrassed to say, but when I met him, I said, "Don't come at me with your Jesus stuff. I'm just looking for the right team for me." Right? It's so arrogant. So I just, it's, the time, you look back and you just think, how stupid of things can you say to people sometimes? And I can write a whole book of those. Me too. But I said, "Don't come at me with your Jesus stuff, but I would love to come and learn more about you." And so started rescuing with him and his team. And I started, and there's no more Jesus-filled human being, more solid believer, more genuine human being on the face of the planet that could have been planted. And it's only him, by the way, because he's a badass. He's a former, recon Marine, all of the bona fides, just a badass. And I just watched. They never forced it down my throat. I had a solid base of, I know there was a God and I'm not him. That was kind of my perspective on
That's a good place to start, right?
And so, but I just started to see on these missions. We have a prayer circle. There's a big team. When you see certain ministries, you have certain ministries as the operators. That's those of us that go and kick doors and take down the bad guys and grab the kids. And then there's the rest of the organization, which without them, there would be no rescues. And we have a prayer circle. We have a support team. We have, our funders. We have the people that come in and get the ranch ready. They, when we've been out for 2 days and we're coming back and, driving, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and we would crash the cars. They meet us and drive us the rest of the way home. Like, there's an incredible group of human beings that is Slave-Free Project, right? That's the bigger umbrella. CERT is actually the operators. And so I started to see miracles happen, Bob. I just, things that I couldn't deny. And I was seeing them with my own eyes. It wasn't somebody preaching at me. It wasn't somebody guilting me in. It wasn't somebody, passing around a thing at church, which is all of those things are important to people. Right. But for me, it was watching. I'll give you one example. We were in this particular city, and we were on about the 4th or 5th day of looking for this 12-year-old girl. And we followed every lead that we possibly could. We kicked every door. We knocked on every door. We followed up on every single lead. And the further that you get away from the leads that you get and the information you get, the less likely it is that you're going to find them or at all, or find them alive. And so we were all really, really tired, really discouraged. And we sat down for a meal. We were going to have to leave the next day. And we sat down for a meal, and the phone rings while we're eating, and the prayer circle called, and they said, "Hey, have you guys checked the hospitals?" And we're like, "Well, we drove by them, but that was none of the hospitals weren't on our lead sheet." And they're like, "We're getting a really strong message that you need to go to the hospitals. There's 2 in the city." So we went by one, nothing. Went by the second one, nothing. And again, discouraged, drove across the street because we were going to fill up the vehicles and start our way home. And right there, as we pull in, one of our operators goes, "I think she's in that car over there." And sure enough, she was in the car getting gas with her pimp, who was getting ready to take her to the hospital. And we surrounded this car, and this was in the middle of the BLM riots and all of this stuff. So cops, if you're dressed like a cop, if you're if you're white in the wrong neighborhood, and all of us were white, on the entire team. And this little girl was a little girl of color. And so we surrounded the car, and we made the phone calls to law enforcement, and and stood there. It was nighttime, freezing cold, one of the coldest nights I'd ever experienced in my entire life. And there she was. Our biggest white dude that was on our team stood post right by her door to make sure that she wasn't going to get hurt and that she wasn't going anywhere, so that he could be ready to act if something went wrong. And I was standing right behind him in a secondary position. And about an hour and a half in, we stood there for 3, maybe 4 hours before the cops were actually able to get there, through the defund the police, which was the dumbest thing that you could possibly imagine, to get anybody out there. But we stood, you know what I mean? And this is the job of a man in life, I believe, is just stand. No matter what the weather is, no matter what the circumstances are, you stand for your family, you stand for what's right, whether that costs you your life or not. Right. That's a life well spent. And so we stood there, and about an hour and a half in, this young lady rolled down the window and said, "I can't believe all of this is just for me." And it breaks my heart. Like I said, I'm not a crier. It's very difficult to get through this story, but I can't believe all of this is for me. And without a heartbeat, he said to her, he said, "Look," he said, "baby girl, there's 37 of us that have been looking for you nonstop. You have no idea how important you are to God."
Wow.
And to see his heart break, and I'm bawling behind him, and to see her start bawling, and she goes, I'd like to get out of the car. Right. Which is basically saying, I'm going to separate from this pimp who destroys them mentally, by the way, just destroys them. Your family hates you. They put them in cages. They will give them food when they're being good. They take all of the humanity out of that child as soon as they possibly can to make them more controllable. And then they put themselves in the position of being their savior. Right. So it's not, everybody's like, oh, they can't, they leave and it's just supposed to go back to normal. It's a tremendous breaking down of the human psychology, which if you mirror that with what goes on in tyrannical governments, you can see the same methodologies that they use. They censor you, they take away your identity, they call you names that you're not. All of those things are used in trafficking and have been for a long time. So in order for her to have that breakthrough and say, I want away from that, And then we keep the girls, in particular, we keep them away from the men on our team. That's why we have lots of women that are on our team, and then they handle them until the police or the parents or whoever is there, to take them to recovery. And one thing happens is they get in the truck. Pastor Rudy says one thing to him: "I want to apologize to you on behalf of every man who's ever hurt you." And then he gets out of the vehicle. And then the girls take over and they preach love, and they give her a Bible that is custom made, by the way. There's a Bible team that custom makes. We get the picture, we get the story of who we're going after. A custom made Bible is in there, notes that come on people's heart, that, things that they know that they're going through are in the Bible. And then they're put in that environment until they go to the next level. And we do our best to help make sure that transition is good. Mm-hmm. But I saw that over and over and over again, brother, because that's a miracle. You can't explain that in the human realm. You can't explain that in the human mind, because we did everything humanly possible that we had within our egos and with our experience and with everything that we could do. And it was a breath from God that said to somebody that was praying for us 4 states away, "Hey, call them and tell them to go look at the hospital."
Jeez.
Over and over and over, Bob. I can go on all night with these stories, but I tell you this to say that's what made me get rid of that shell, was to know and understand that no matter who I was, no matter what I thought I was, no matter what I wanted the world to believe about me, it was never going to be greater than God. Amen. And so you asked me my insecurity. This is a very, very long way to get to your question.
It's a great story about that. Absolutely.
I'm afraid of one thing, and I have an insecurity about one thing. It's being out of the will of God. That's it.
Brother, that is powerful. Whoa. Being out of the will of God is your one insecurity. Man, what a great answer. And man, love that. Thank you for sharing that, brother. Man, thank you for sharing that. When you see the movie, or when you talk to somebody like you who's been on the front line, in crashing down doors, pulling kids out when, all the crap, you go, okay, well, what motivated? Well, why did the people do that? Well, money. I mean, but how did they desensitize themselves to the point where money could take such a point that they were willing to abuse little kids, hurt, even kill little kids? How did they get to that point where they could just literally desensitize themselves to that point?
Man, there's so many experiments that people could look at, over the years. The prison experience, the prison experiment, wartime, things. And I could go through that historically. As you know, I'm a huge history buff. Yeah, because I like specific examples, because it gives us examples to avoid. Unfortunately, nobody learns from history, and we just repeat it over and over again.
Truth.
But I would ask the question of anybody that watches this or is watching this. I would ask the question, how does it happen? All we have to do is look at our own lives, right? And this is the thing why people change channels and why people don't want to hear these messages, is because I drive stuff back to Jason Cisneros. I can't do anything about what Bob's going to do. I can't do anything about anybody that's going to watch anything. So the question that I'm asking is, I look around and I say, how could we allow our government to force us to take a medical, experiment? How could we look at our family and friends get threatened with jobs to partake? How could we, sit back? I mean, years ago, when we said at some point in time, Facebook and Twitter and all these other places are gonna do things like, they don't like what you say, therefore they're going to censor you. Right. In the freest nation on the planet, with the First Amendment and all these other things, you get desensitized because you don't have people around you that are holding themselves to a higher standard. You don't have people around you that are to your exact group, right? That hold themselves to going to the next level. Our next level is never going to be found in the next level of achievement for a selfish purpose. That next level is always found in serving other people and with your business.
Yeah.
Right. When was the last time you talked about, somebody in business? And I get asked all the time for obvious reasons about business. And I say, when was the last time that can you articulate how you fell in love with the outcome of your client? Or everybody can describe their widget. Very few people can tell me how they fell in love with the outcome of their client. Right. We don't hold ourselves to a higher standard because it becomes easier and easier and easier to say, because there's an arbitrary line drawn between blue and red, which are gang colors, by the way, right?
Yeah.
Blue and red, Crips and Bloods, like those are gang colors, and they just happen to be Democrat and Republican, which both of them suck right now. By the way, this is not a political statement.
Right.
Suck. Our leadership sucks, right? And we chose them. But at the end of the day, you look at that and you say to yourself, how can I allow this to happen? To Pastor Rudy's story about how, he was a Force Recon Marine. They don't get any tougher than that. Right. And he was going and he saw these things happening and he was like, see, Jesus, like he was at war with God at the time. He said, this is the thing, right? I'm around here. I see what's going on with these kids. How can you let that happen? And the answer to him in prayer was, no, Rudy, how can you let this happen? Right?
Better question.
It's a great question for all of us to ask. Is the desensitization comes because I've gone face to face with a lot of traffickers, and it's been interesting for me. I mean, there's a lot of people that are out there. I was one of them in the beginning, and then I can tell you that I'm not all the way to Pastor Rudy level. Pastor Rudy says, if you could change the heart of a trafficker, you just saved 300 kids.
Wow.
And I'm not there yet. That's for me to deal with, right? It's for me to deal with, to get to a place where I can forgive and pray for. It's not, and Pastor Rudy will say, look, doesn't mean I'm not going to do what I have to do to rescue a kid in the heat of the battle. But then the next step is, once that is over, I need to pray for them. I need to show them that they don't need to be doing what they're doing, because no human being feels good about themselves by exploiting the innocent or the vulnerable. It's impossible. And I've seen it over and over. Like I said, I've been face to face with a lot of these people, and they're your neighbors. Everybody wants to say this is a foreign country thing. No, it's not. It's a pastor, it's a judge, it's a prominent businessman, it's an actor, an actress. It's the people that look like they're doing these things because of money, and because we as a humanity have allowed the lower standards and the lower calls on who we are to take over, and to say, look, as long as our leaders are all doing the stuff that they're doing, I'm going to do the same stuff. And if I happen to be part of the gang color, blue or red, if I happen to be the one that's got the most power, I'm going to align myself with that side, and I'm going to ignore. We always say, how could Hitler Germany happen?
Yeah, right.
Look around.
Right.
You know how it could happen. How can these people be desensitized? It's because we allow it. We get what we allow, and we don't hold ourselves to a higher standard, and on and on and on. And this isn't a guilt trip. This is just how I talk to myself.
Yeah. I appreciate it.
If I allow myself to live by my base, and I just want to tell everybody, I have a lot when I was younger. You know what I mean? I thought it was all about the money, and I thought about, that it was just like there's these cutthroat things. You've got this Andrew Tate running around that everybody's idolizing right now, and I pray for him, but he's a piece of garbage right now, and he's validated by these interviews, and it was a TikTok thing, and no, it wasn't. You were selling women, and whether it was over the phone or he was tricking guys out of money or whatever it was, he was taking advantage of people in vulnerable positions. And that is not something to be emulated. I don't care what kind of car he drives. I don't care what kind of watch he wears. I don't care. I don't care about any of those things. They don't matter. I used to think they mattered, though.
Yeah.
I'm not judging anybody. I'm just saying that I got taken by it too. The things that matter are eternal. Our souls are eternal. And you always say, well, we're not going to take the car or this stuff with us. No, we're not. We're going to leave behind a legacy, right? And whatever you believe, doesn't matter what you believe. I don't judge anybody. I just happen to be a Christian that believes in the Bible and Jesus Christ. That happens to be my path. Doesn't have to be everybody's path.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you do have to hold yourself to a higher standard. And the more that happens, one by one, everybody that's watching this, one by one, you just make a different decision. You decide to treat the Uber driver different. You decide to treat the waitress different. You decide to, to call up somebody that's on your heart, to call them up. You decide that you're going to apply yourself, right? The parable of the talents in the Bible.
Yeah.
I don't know what talent you have, but if you applied yourself more to it rather than the outcome, you can see that it's the journey that matters, not the outcome.
Yeah.
Because who you become. Like there's all, I'll keep babbling. I'm gonna shut up and let you ask.
No, man. No, man. That's why we wanted you here. We want to hear from you. We want to learn from you. And I appreciate everything you're saying. I just know there's a lot of people that maybe didn't know before the movie came out. They just didn't know. What do you say to those people that go, man, I had no idea what was really going on. What can I do about it? What do you say they can do?
It's a great question, man. And I get asked a lot because the movie has raised the awareness for sure. Right?
Sure.
It's certainly has. And I get
my
asked,
hope is that ministries like Shirt Ministries and others will benefit from that.
sure.
That's why I wanted to bring you on. I think there's going to be a great benefit from the awareness. So
yeah, and it's, again, I always think no matter where it comes from, it could be like, I believe that God used Hitler's stuff to change the world in a better way. I don't, there's horrific stories and things so everything gets used for God's good. I don't have to know the plan. It doesn't matter to me. But what I will tell you is that people that are listening, we saw this raging thing, and I just called it virtue signaling, right? We saw raging virtue signaling that did absolutely no good. And defund the police was one of them. I am in the neighborhoods of color. I saw the destruction that defund the police caused. And so I will go to the mat in the argument to say that was one of the dumbest the BLM perspective, whatever anybody thought it was, I'm not here to argue that. What I'm here to say is that drove defund the police.
Yeah.
In LA County, they had 60 or so child trafficking officers. After defund the police, they have 0.
wow.
A lot of trafficking goes on in communities of color, right? That's where we're at. We're not, we're not in some of these, we're in it. Right. And those are kids and children of color that we're going after and rescuing. And so you see what virtue signaling does is most often make the situation worse. Okay. And so when something comes out like this, you already see the battle between people that are like, oh, they're tearing down Tim, they're tearing down the movie, they're tearing down all this stuff. And I have this WWAS, right? Whining without a solution.
Amen. Yeah, you come at me and tell me a problem in a company and I say, do you have a solution with that? If not, go back and work on a solution.
Exactly. So I don't really, again,
love that.
What they do with their money. Do they, were they using rescues as sizzle, like the report came out and on their little whiteboard that, I don't care about any of that stuff. What I care about is once your awareness comes forward, my experience was it broke my heart, it broke my spirit, and I said, I'm going to do something about it. And then I did. Now I did it from my own talents, right? It's not that everybody's going to go, oh, well, Jason's saying, well, I need to go kick doors and blah, 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 and put my life on the line. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if you're a business owner, make more money, and give to a charity that is involved, that is actually doing the same things that they say they're doing, do that, right? Slave Free Project, those guys, every penny gets used. That none of it goes to enrich anybody. I'm not paid. Matter of fact, not only am I not paid, I donate a hell of a lot. You know, we pay our own flights, we pay our own food, we pay all of this stuff. Like nobody is paid in our organization. There is no buildup of cash because we expend it as fast as we can to go get more kids, right? And to provide aftercare. I mean, to help them get to aftercare. And so in, you know, whatever it is, if that happens to be what you do, go make more money for a purpose, for an outcome, right? If you happen to be somebody that's artistic, right? Connect at Slave Free Project with the people that build out our Bibles, right? If you happen to be somebody that's a good chef, come cook for us, because we go days without food. You know what I mean? If you're somebody that knows electricity, come out to the ranch, you know, and put some electrical in a building that will help us, you know, along the way. Get in the fight is what I'm trying to say, with whatever talents you may have. And it's not just money. If you have money, great. That money is a resource that can be utilized in good ways. But you know, again, research who you're giving it to make sure that the administrative costs aren't super huge, that they don't have a big pile of it in a bank account, that it's not being used to get people elected or get people, you know, fancy living quarters or make them famous or whatever it is. Make sure that the money's going to the work. And so, you know, that's what it is. And I say, don't let awareness become virtue signaling, is one. And then make sure that if it does stir something inside of you, to apply that, your own talents, whatever that may be, apply that to the fight with an organization that you can, because this is a multi-pronged fight. I'll quickly tell you.
Tell us.
Prevention. It happens in reinstilling in our children their worth. You know, taking the screens away and spending time with your actual children, right? Those that prevention in schools to say, hey, look out for this stuff. If we've had girls that have taken, their own friends have sold them. Like there's insane things that happen. And start living a standard of life yourself that sets another standard for somebody else behind you, right? That's prevention. Rescue is what we do. There's other people that do it. I love my team. I you know, like I said, I went through almost a dozen other teams, and finally found my home. I'll be with Pastor Rudy as long as he'll have me, right? Then you have aftercare. And aftercare is extremely important because you have somebody that's been damaged, something that got taken away from them that didn't belong to the person who took it. And there's a lot of recovery that happens for them and their families, right? Find yourself become a recovery expert. And then there's the law, the legal side and the lawmakers. And, you know, if you and I are in LA and we're walking down the street, you're a trafficker and I have an 8-ball of cocaine, I'm going to do more time for my 8-ball of cocaine than you will for trafficking a child.
Serious.
It's ridiculous. So, you know, people like in Arizona, Leo Benassi, right? I think it was 2889. Their bill that they passed that said pedophilia, child pornography, trafficking, those things are life sentences, right? There's got to be some deterrent. And those are the areas. What if you happen to be into politics, man, run for office and be somebody that stands for the kids, right? Wow. And for our elderly and for our veterans, and do something good instead of patting your own pockets, like the group of a-holes that we have running this country right now. You know,
would you ever think about running for office?
I've been asked a couple of times. I may, you know,
really?
I may. Yeah. I've been asked, you know, I live currently in 2 states that I've been asked to maybe run. But I don't know yet. I don't know. It's not, God hasn't, I in prayer, I keep asking. It hasn't, you know, God makes things easy down the path that I'm supposed to go. And so again, my biggest fear being out of the will of God. So I'm not going to go, you know, do something according to my own will. But there's a lot of things, everybody that listens, that's where awareness, this whole awareness thing, can really be of value is if it triggers a new behavior. It triggers you to become better at what you do, not for selfish purposes, but for easing suffering. And that's a message that's sometimes hard to hear, but I believe, you know, and you probably can back this up, that the best messages in all of our lives have been the one that have been hardest to hear.
Amen. No doubt about that one. No doubt. Brother, I want to open it up for a couple of people to have some comments and some questions. As always, brother, I love the message that you have, but I believe that a great message has the right method, has the right message, and has the right messenger. And so whenever I see something not working, I go, was it the method? Was it the message? Or was it the messenger? And sometimes it's all three.
Yeah.
I love the fact that yours is all three for the pro. It's a great message, great messenger, and a great method by which you're getting that message out. So Flo, you have a comment or a question? Guys, if you have a comment or a question, raise your hands. If you're on the phone, I'll call in anyways. But Flo.
Oof.
Hi, Flo.
Jason, my gosh, thank you. Love you, God. Just love you. I wrote down, and I go back and I was like, you know, when you were a little kid, you said you can ease suffering, and you've made that your mission. And I just thank you for educating, you know, not just the rescue, but all the, you know, how it trickles down into everything that I had no idea that all of those things touch. Bob had a survivor of human trafficking, and she was saying that you know, she was afraid for her life because the most powerful people are involved. And it's like, how do we go about fighting that fight? I mean, that's a whole nother fight.
Flo, it's a great question, and here's how I address it in my own life, and how I vision that this is going to work. And it's there's a thing about, there's a resistance, right? And you know, I've learned a lot of hand-to-hand combat, and Aikido is one of them. You know, Tony Robbins talks about Aikido from stage, right? And how you use the force against somebody rather than that, you know, just that physical face-to-face battling it out. And I learned a long time ago that I can fight somebody. I can get into it with the best of them. I'm one of those weird individuals that enjoys conflict. As long as it's going to lead to something better on the other side, I'll fight all day, baby. Like I'm a dog with a bone, you know. And but I will tell you that in this particular fight, in a lot of areas, if you're experiencing resistance, what is the thing that you want to experience instead? Right? That's the question that starts me off. I say, what is the thing I want to experience instead? And then I overwhelmingly gather people and lead and overflow what's going, the bad part. Rather than fighting with it, I'm going to pull together as much good and people that are aligned with me as I possibly can to just overwhelm. So these powerful people that are doing it, they're powerful because they have money. They're powerful because they have money, or they're in positions of power that they got because they have money. Right? And we don't talk about it enough. This is my mission on a whole other platform, which is to make good people rich. Right? I own a company called Anton J, and it's a consulting company. Our motto is help good people make more money, get more time so they can do more good. That's our motto. We only help people that, I don't care what the charity is, but I say whatever you're going to increase, because every company that I touch makes more money. Every company that I touch can retire the person that's doing the work, right? Every company I touch. And it's just I can say that not with the ego, but with proof, right? Anybody can go to my LinkedIn and see the stories of people. I tell my new line nowadays, Bob, you'll love this, is that I've retired more people than Mike Tyson, you know, and
That's great.
But the idea is the example right now, we have these CBDCs, right? The government backed digital currencies that are going to take all autonomy away from the individual. And we're just going to let it go through because it's going to be cheaper. It's going to be more, you know, blah, blah, blah. But every war has been won and fought at the bank. As I said at the beginning, I'm a huge historian. And they, you know, the stories like Braveheart and 300, those stories are the things that come to light in movies. But underneath of each one of those battles was somebody financing it. Soldiers don't hit the field unless they're fed. Right. They don't win battles unless they have bullets. Yeah. And it's the same exact thing, is that if we're all awake now going, what do we do? The answer is you've got to, whatever perspective. That's why the business community is who I'm pouring into right now, saying whatever it is that you do, stop doing business with multinationals, start doing business with your neighbor, and get great at what you do. That by itself, we could win this war that we're in, that we find ourselves in right now, if all of us learn the principles of becoming wealthy and how to make money. And then we control the messaging and we take over the power, and we start to say, no, you're not powerful anymore. You don't get to use kids. You don't get to, you know, make the laws. You don't get to take, no. We're going to put good people that are in positions of power and have wealth that are ethical capitalists. Ethical capitalism changed the world in the first place. Go back to 1890. What did we see happen? Everybody's like 1776, it changed the world. No, it didn't. No, it didn't, because you had abject poverty, right? Abject poverty existed all the way through 1776. 95% of the world lived in abject poverty until 1890 is when it changed. What happened in 1890? It was the first time in the world that a centralized government in the United States stood up and said, no. Too much money coagulating in the hands of too few is never good. It's never good. So they passed the first anti-trade law. It later became the anti-trade law of the FTC Act in like 1908 or something like that. That was the first time in the world that a centralized government said, we're going to leave the playing field level so that all of us that are on this call or listening to it in the future can build a business based on our talents, our sacrifice, and our willingness to get better at something. Wow. And the core of ethical capitalism is that I must fall in love with the outcome of my client. And in order to have employees, I have to fall in love with the outcome of my employee. Unethical capitalism was what we see happening with Amazon and Facebook, all coordinating with a centralized government who don't want anything more but to crush down who has power. So we talk about what we can do. How I approach it is we got to overwhelm the system to go back to a time when we all do business with each other. And in ethical business, there can be no racism. There can be no homophobia. There can be no, because what you've done is you're not saying, hey, I want to fall in love with your outcome, but not if you're Black. That doesn't work in business, right? I want to fall in love with your outcome, but not if you're this, or you're a woman, or you're a man, or you're white, or you're Hispanic. That doesn't work. It's the great equalizer to say, I must serve you regardless of what you look like, right? And so if we overwhelm the system with that, you take back a lot of the power, because it was we the people. It's not we the people anymore. That's a fallacy. We used to be the greatest country in the world. We're not the greatest country in the world anymore. But we still have the ability, without bullets and blood, to be able to take it back. And it's by overwhelming the system, by all of us doing everything that we possibly can to do business with each other when we find another good human being.
Preach, brother. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Flo, is that it? I have a long-winded answers, and I apologize.
Love it.
No, I'm doing this, Jason.
I see Alana has a question, so let's call on Alana really quick. Comment or a question, Alana, either one.
There we go. And thank you. I was doing the same thing as Flo was. And so one question I have, I'm in a group called Altrusa, and it's women, kind of like a Lions Club. And we raise money and we give it to where we choose. And this subject, we haven't donated locally. So can you give me info on where your group is? And if the organization, which I'm not in charge of, I've been a member for a year and a half, if we can't give it too far away and we need to stay more local, then I'll reach out to you separately to say, what can we do here in San Luis area? But I would like info on how we can support you. And Altrusa, you know, most of the time I put requests in, they're giving out $1,500 to veterans and replacing cots at the homeless shelter and children's literacy, but they would very much be behind this.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love that. I love the heart of it. Slavefreeproject.com is the name of the organization. And by the way, you know, a lot of people think it's my organization. It's not. I am a servant of that organization. It goes directly to Pastor Rudy and his family, and it's used. It's the average. What we find, you know, we are very, very underfunded for how many kids that we actually get. It's about $3,500 a kid on average, and it's hundreds. The amount of kids that we rescue in a year is in the you know, it's hundreds of kids. It's not, you know, onesie twosie here and there, or, you know, other people have $72 million and haven't rescued a kid in 10 years. It's like, it's weird how it all works. You know, that's why you can get frustrated if you let it. But yes, it's you San Luis Obispo.
Yes, I'm a couple doors from Flo.
Okay, awesome.
And
Yeah,
tell me the name once again, please.
Excuse me, it's slavefreeproject.com. Yeah.
Got it.
And the name of our rescue team is CERT Ministries, but the website, the umbrella organization is slavefreeproject.com. Thank you, Flo. She put it in the chat.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And thank you. And I loved what you shared at the end about being the best we can, making money, giving to others. That just touches my soul. So thank you for that.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for caring. I really, really appreciate it.
And then we've got some comments on the Facebook, so I'll let you kind of see those as we go on, you know, afterwards. But Jim Miller had a question. So Jim, a question or a comment, either one's fine.
I'm trying to start my video. I guess that's not going to work.
Okay.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm so inspired, and I've been looking for people to surround myself with that are actually doing something, and it's just absolute beauty to me. I love what you said. You said we're useful until we decide we're not.
Oh, good.
And that's so powerful for every one of us to decide to be useful. And, you know, teaming up with people like you to make a difference in the world for kids and for our communities and for our nation. It's just, the time is now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Time is now. Well said.
Thanks for sharing that, Jim. Appreciate you. Jason, we're at 8:05, and I promised to get you out of here, or 8:13. Wow, sorry about that. 8:03. I can't remember. I can't see. I don't have my glasses on.
I have my glasses on.
So, brother, I just again want to just tell you thank you for who you are, as well as what you do, but first and foremost for who you are in my life, who you are in the lives of so many people that I know that value you and appreciate you. And thank you for doing what you're doing and being a relentless servant of doing it, even when you don't feel like it, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's comes at a possible personal cost of yours. And also, let me thank your wife for being that servant as well, that is willing to fill in that gap between you being at home and leaving to go do something so meaningful. And for her,
let me tell you,
gap.
Bob, she's on our rescue team.
Love
and
it.
probably more valuable to the team at this point than I am. So I could tell you she's a better shot than I am. Pisses me off to say it, but but she is in the fight, man, and very, very talented. It was great because when we first started dating and I was telling her about this stuff, she's like, you do what? Like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Right. And we met, it was interesting. We met at Tony's event, and I hadn't been in the Tony environment forever. And she was from Pittsburgh and the event was in LA. And so she flew out with her twin sister and her twin sister's husband, and they were there, and she worked her way up to the very front. And I was there as a guest of Tony because we just brought him back from the rescue.
Nice.
He wanted to bring us up and introduce us. I was there on Sunday for 4 or 5 hours in a room of 10,000 people. And she was there and we were here, and it was one of the hug breaks. And I saw her and I'm like, wow. Like, and she was right by her twin sister too. And I was like, but it was Emily that caught my eye, hugged, and it's been an incredible love story ever since. But she was the very first thing, she's like, what can I do to help? What can I do to support? And she's been like, she goes on op. She does has to wear the bulletproof vest, all the stuff. She is the light of my life and a blessing from God. I think that would not have come to me had I not started to walk the path that I did, because I wouldn't have deserved her.
Oh, man, I appreciate that.
So thank you for saying
I can't wait to see her, meet her, and give her a hug.
You're gonna love her.
So
You'll love her more than me. It happens every time. Everybody's like, who's Jason?
I hear you. People feel the same way. Bob, we'll tolerate Bob to get the flow, but we'll tolerate Bob.
That's right.
But no, I appreciate it. So, brother, I just thank you so much for who you are, what you're doing. Thank you for taking the time. I know it's 11:06 there.
Yes.
So I appreciate you for taking that time as well. And we're going to post this in the Facebook group, so we'll have a way to archive it, and then we'll also put the notes and information there so people can reach out to you. But he's already in the Facebook group, so you guys can participate there and connect with him. Guys, do something. Do something with whatever stirs you to the point where you go, man, I just feel uncomfortable. Good. Don't get comfortable. Be comfortable being uncomfortable and go, what can I do? What must I do? And then do that. And I know Jason will appreciate that as well. So guys, get out there, make it a great month. We'll be back here on the third Thursday of the month. And I love you guys. I appreciate you. I don't take it lightly that you choose to associate with us, because I believe that there's something in all of us looking for more, and every next level demands a different you. So thank you guys.
And I want to say thank you for your years of dedication and all the work that you do and the lives that you touch, brother. I love you. There's, few people in my life get this from me, but it's anywhere, anytime, for any reason. And that's for you.
Wow. Thank you, brother. I feel the same. I appreciate you. Awesome. Love you, brother.
Okay. Love you more.
All right, guys, get out there, make it a great month. Enjoy your next level.
Bye now.
You've been listening to Your Next Level Now with Bob Donnell. To find out more, call us at 949-542-6398. That's 949-542-6398. Or you can find more information on our website at everythingnextlevel.com. That's everythingnextlevel.com.